Robert Plank Show, episode 359. Awaken your true inner power, live with purpose, and make positive personal changes with the Purposeful Millionaire, James Nowlin.
Fantastic.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. And so, have you ever had sort of a bad day in your life? Well, we're going to talk right now with James Nowlin, and he had a really bad day that caused him to reassess and to kind of wake back up. And I'm excited to hear about the story. I'm excited for you guys listening. So, James Nowlin had a near-death boating accident, and he was 31 years old, and it forced him to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And as a result of what he calls his awakening, this already self-made millionaire and respected CEO reshaped his perspective and reprioritized his life. In his book, The Purposeful Millionaire, James Nowlin shares the four-part formula he used to transform his life into one of abundance and purposefulness. And he believes that if he can survive the literal waters from which he was pulled, then you too can survive and thrive in life's toughest waters. So, James, nice to be talking to you today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Robert.
I'm glad you're on. And so, sounds like this like really scary thing happened to you. Are you okay now?
I'm okay now. It happened back on August 25th, 2012, and in fact, I'm coming up on the fifth anniversary of my accident. And I call it a near-death accident, Robert, but it was really more like a death accident in which my body was recovered from the lake, and I was brought back to life by the rescuers. And it allowed me to really reevaluate my life, to look harder at some of the things that I was doing right, but more importantly, some of the things that I was doing wrong. And from time to time, I'll hear from people, James, I feel so sorry for you that you had such a horrible accident. And I said, no, don't get it wrong. This day is a day that I actually call my second birthday or my awakening, in that it allowed me to really excavate, whether I was living as purposefully and as powerfully as I could. And quite frankly, on a scale from 1 to 10, I was not living between an 8 to 10 in terms of happiness on a daily basis. I was probably living somewhere between a 5 and an 8. But this reevaluation allowed me to figure out what was not working, what was working, and what I needed to do better now that I came back having the second life.
Super crazy. And like we all hear about those sorts of things where like people in their lives they have just a terrible like traumatic experience, and it's a wake up call, or their life flashes before their eyes, or maybe some people are living kind of an existence where it looks good showing off to other people on the outside, but then inside it's really hollow. And a lot of people live their whole lives and don't even get that wake up call. So it sounds like you kind of had this bad experience that you turned into a good thing. So can you sort of start us off at the beginning and tell us like what the heck happened that day, and what was this accident all about?
So I was 31 years old, and I was 5 or 6 years deep into my company, and I had survived the Great Recession, and I had actually made the company quite successful and had become a millionaire. And I invited a buddy of mine to go out to my lake house out in East Texas, and I said, well, hey, let's go kayaking. And that day we decided to actually leave our life jackets at home because the sky was perfectly blue. There was not a lot of wind. It was just a beautiful, hot August day in Texas. Also, my buddy is a former sea shepherd. He's one of the guys who goes out on anti-whaling expeditions to protect the sea waters from pirates and all that stuff. And he's a surfer, and I'm a former triathlete. So we said, you know what, to heck with the life jackets. We're going to take these kayaks out to the middle of the lake and just have a good time and reminisce. So we get out to the middle of the lake, and storm clouds start rolling in very quickly. The temperature changed about 20 degrees in just a few minutes outside. And we thought, okay, we've got to get to shore. And I knew that because how quickly the storm was coming in, that we could potentially be in trouble. So we paddled as quickly as we can. And Robert, the storm came in such a way that it was a freak storm. It wasn't just a normal storm that you can kind of look at and say, hey, you know what? I've got 10 minutes to get to shore. This thing came in with an incredible amount of quickness. But that day, it began raining. 3-foot waves started crashing by our kayaks. My kayak sank. I tried to recover my kayak, but I became quickly exhausted. And my buddy Tyler, who was with me, his kayak sank after mine, but he had not been in the water for as long as I had. And unfortunately, while I was trading water, trying to balance myself out a little bit and trying to catch my breath, I inhaled a big gulp of dirty Texas lake water, and it went all the way into my lungs. And I began to get in bad shape relatively quickly. And my buddy Tyler, who was with me, he's also a medical doctor. He said, you know what? I've got to make a life or death decision right now. I've got to get to shore to get you some help. And by that time, it was dark outside. And I realized that if Tyler's saying goodbye to me right now, and I've inhaled this horrible lake water, it might be goodbye forever. So that night, I did not anticipate him coming back. I treaded water for as long as I could. And by the time Tyler and rescuers had come back with flashlights and jet skis and rescue crews and all that stuff, I'd actually drowned. So they pulled my body from the water, brought me to shore, and revived me. And I remember everything just like it was yesterday, Robert. I'd gone to a different place and I was looking down at my body as if I were in a helicopter with a spotlight being rescued by these wonderful, courageous people who found my body and brought me back to life. And having gone through something like that, it was just a true awakening for me. And every single day that I spent in recovery after that, I got to re-examine and reevaluate my life, knowing that life is short, life is precious, it can be taken away from us in an instance. And it's not about the car in my driveway, how much money I have, the house I live in, or flashy friends with flashy titles. It's about the work that I'm doing and whether I'm living my calling that God has given me to make the world a better place. And since then, I'm living a better life. I am surrounding myself with more like-minded people. My business success has increased since then. My happiness has increased since then. And because of all those things, I am so grateful. But the purpose of my book, really, Robert, is so that others don't have to go through a death accident or a near-death accident in order to receive the awakening that I did.
Crazy. And I mean, so many things to unpack in there. And I mean, I was almost a little frightened just hearing your story. And I mean, I can't even imagine going through those kinds of things. And so you went through this like just terrible, near-death experience, but which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And that money isn't everything, and the things you have aren't everything, and like have a purpose and things like that. And so I'm really curious. So after like the hard part, I guess, was over with, and then it was time to kind of, like you said, recover and like the long haul. Was this realization instant, or did it kind of take a while to dawn on you?
It was not instant, Robert. And in fact, I was dealing with a little bit of brain damage because my brain had been deprived of oxygen for quite some time. I would repeat myself and tell the same jokes over and over and over. And I really had a hard time speaking and gathering the right words to formulate my sentences the right way. But after I started to get a little bit better, what I really struggled with was depression because I had actually experienced euphoria from my drowning accident. Going through that transition of being in this place on earth to another place was not painful for me. It was actually euphoric. And I told you about, looking down at my body as if I were in a helicopter with a spotlight shining on my body as the rescuers rescued me. There was more that happened there. The faces of relatives and loved ones flashed before my eyes. I felt as if I were wrapped in a warm blanket. There was just so much that went on between the painful inhalation of the dirty lake water to transitioning to a feeling of euphoria that I found myself depressed in a horrible way months after the accident. And in fact, it lasted not just months, but for years. It lasted for 3 years. And I went to my doctor and I saw a therapist and I got on antidepressants, and I was taking a microdose of an antidepressant, basically with the hope that, okay, if I pop this pill on a daily basis, even if there's the placebo effect in place, there's something that I need to get myself back on track. I realized about 2 years ago that I did not want to be on antidepressants. I realized that I was too blessed and I needed to find my mission on this earth in order to grasp the happiness that is truly achievable in this life. And I started to put into play rituals, habits, routines on a daily basis of doing some of the same things, the same consistent rule applications to how I deal with situations, how I deal with breathing, meditation, all those things. And I found myself becoming happier. And once I did that on a super consistent basis, my life began to change. My human relationships began to change. I began attracting the clients that I wanted to serve instead of serving, complicated clients. I call them, C and D clients. I was actually serving, A-list clients that were truly bringing me joy and they were valuing my work. So all these rituals and routines that I was doing, I said, wow, I've gone through this transformation in my life. I got rid of the antidepressants. I got to happiness. I found my purpose. Therefore, I must write about this in a book. And the title of my book is The Purposeful Millionaire. 52 rules for creating a life of wealth and happiness now. And those 52 rules are things that I live by. They are dogma, they are routines, they're habits, they're practices, they're little things. Like, for example, when I wake up in the morning, I do the same thing every single morning. I do my exercise routine, I'll have my coffee, and then I do my hardest tasks of the day. But before I really get going, I'll do my stretches, and then I'll make up my bed, and I'll do an incantation. And I might just say out loud to myself, I am, I can, I will. Or I love you, I love you, I love you. And I repeat that again and again and again because I'm empowering my brain with these positive thoughts about myself. I'm pushing away the negative thoughts, and I'm planting seeds for flowers and trees to grow while I'm crowding out the negative weeds of self doubt. And I do that again and again and again on a daily basis. And I live by those rules, and I want to share those rules with as many people as possible.
Super cool. And that's a great message. And I can relate to a lot of that as far as, it's really easy to get caught in the day-to-day routine and just kind of rolling out of bed and just jumping right into things and not really having a plan and sort of having the day control you. And I can definitely relate to those things as far as like as soon as I started taking control of that early part of the day and choosing when to wake up and doing those things like making the bed so that I have like an early win and taking a walk or a run and dealing with like the exercise part and getting my body moving. Those are all those things where like we've all heard about those kinds of things, but then it seems like we've heard about them, the successful people do all these things, but then it's like there's so many people left over that they've heard about these sorts of things over and over again, that having those daily rituals and those daily habits. And I mean, like, why do you think people have such a hard time either trying these daily habits or even making them stick?
Well, the hardest part, Robert, is taking the first step. And, I do 20 minutes of exercise every single morning, whether it's yoga or going for a run. And sometimes it's a little bit longer than 20 minutes, but I consistently do it every single day. I do yoga, free body weight exercises, and running on a daily basis. And I alternate between which exercise I'm actually doing. The hard part is that you don't always have to start with 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour of exercise every single day. You've got to start with taking the first step. And the first step might mean doing one push up or doing one stretch and building up to two push-ups the next day or three stretches on the next day. And, we're always taught, get out there and do it. And we're preached at all the time about in the media about you should be eating this, you should be exercising, doing X, Y, or Z. You need to get your heart rate up to a certain point. Let's take those rules away and let's just start with taking the first step, doing that first little thing that you can get into the routine of, which might be one push-up for one person, and then you can congratulate yourself if you can do that consistently for 1, 2, or 3 days and build up to a higher level of success. You don't always have to start big in order to achieve big. And it's like Dr. King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to take the first step. And sometimes taking that first step is the hardest part, but I can guarantee you one thing. Once you take that first step and build upon it, and you do your routine consistently, your life will reap the benefits.
I love it, and I completely agree on all counts. It's just as far as that's a great message of just do the one push up, or just walk to the mailbox and back, or just walk around the block and back, and just get that to be part of your day. Find the time. Tell yourself that you started to integrate this kind of thing into your time. And I've noticed, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about this. I've just noticed that once I start kind of doing those things and like kind of pushing myself, I notice that I then begin to sort of look to ramp up or exceed those goals. So like I'll start off by and I had to get back into running lately too because I broke my ankle a couple years ago, and then there was like months of getting that back in business. But then I noticed that like I'd start like running around the block, and then I said, all right, I'm gonna start running a mile, and then I'm gonna start running towards this next thing, and then I'm gonna start running 2 minutes at a time, and then I started saying, well, I know I committed to running 2 minutes at a time, but now I'm going to push myself and go, 2.5 minutes or going 3 minutes, and not really for any particular reason, but just because, I wanted to better myself and achieve more. So, do you have any insights on sort of tapping into that on kind of like bettering your best or kind of like scaling up or doing more and not really knowing why, or just doing it for the purpose of being better and getting yourself out there more?
Yeah, so the main thing is that you've got to get those feel-good endorphins going throughout your body. And once you get those feel-good endorphins going, after you do that first push-up or 5 push-ups, or after you start breaking a little bit of a sweat, your brain tells you, you know what, there's a reward center going on right now, and you're starting to feel better, so it's not going to be as painful to keep going. And so a lot of people feel a sense of satiation, a sense of just being elated with how they begin to feel after they actually get moving. And we can apply those same practices to our professional lives and to our love lives. For example, just practice saying for that first time to your spouse, I love you. You know, getting those words off your lips, saying it, I love you, make some eye contact and say, I'm going to say I love you once a day for, the next 5 days. Once you've done that, work on saying it twice a day. Or make sure that when you're texting him or her, that you end the text message with I love you, or you end your phone conversation with I love you. Get into the practice of that and just notice how the reward centers of happiness in your brain and in your body are just telling you, keep doing what you're doing and build upon that. I've taken these same practices to my business. For example, I'll do some of the hardest work in the morning, my most dreaded task. I'll knock that out. And then I realize, okay, during my most productive time of the day, I actually completed my dreaded task in a quicker time than I actually allotted for it. Therefore, I'm going to knock out 2 more dreaded tasks, and I'm going to have more free time throughout my day to do what I want to do. So it's all about getting started, allowing the reward system of the brain to talk to you, to motivate you to keep going, and understanding how willpower and chemistry and all those things work out. But again, you've got to take that first step. You've got to let chemistry and psychology play into all of this stuff. And then when it feels too hard, you might press a little bit more, but you do the same thing again the next day, and you continue to build and build and build. And before you know it, you've created a really amazing life, spiritually, professionally, emotionally, all those things, and you'll benefit from the habits and the routines that you've created and stuck to.
Super awesome. And what I'm hearing from you, like as you're saying all that, is that kind of we all get stuck in those vicious cycles of, kind of just, dragging through the day and resenting the things we do, and then ending up like taking longer to do those things and resenting them even more, or looking for the bad in those situations. And if we can just introduce those small habits, there might be a little bit of growing pains or a little bit of pain at first, but then if we can stick with it, then we form those new cycles, then it becomes just as hard to break those positive cycles as it is as those negative cycles. So you're making a lot of kind of light bulbs go off in my head. And so you have these 52 rules, and in your bio we talked about your 4-part formula. So is there any sort of like things that this is leading to? Like, is there like a big picture, or once you start doing these habits, does it lead to bigger and better things, or what's sort of like the big idea here?
It leads to bigger and better things. And people often ask me, it seems like you rose to success so quickly and you're in your 30s and you've got a lot of financial success and you seem like a really, really happy person. Well, that's all true, but it's also a 20-year overnight success story. I've been working on self-mastery and getting to my true inner power, which means I'm doing the daily work on my psychology, on my spirituality, on understanding the interconnectivity of mind, body, and spirit, and doing that work on a daily basis. So yes, we can get to the success formula, which is idea plus plan plus execution equals success. But if you're first not mastering self, if you're first not understanding the interconnectivity between mind, body, and spirit, that all those things are linked, and then that in order to have true success and happiness, that's not going to happen unless you understand that linkage. It's just so important to get it. So I just want to spend a second in breaking down what I call the success formula in the book, with idea plus plan plus execution equals success. So Robert, in life, when we have a goal, when we want to get to what that vision is in our mind called success, there are 3 components to it: the idea phase, the planning phase, and the actual execution phase. Well, the phase that most people get stuck in is the idea phase. And if they just so happen to be lucky enough to stop talking about the idea and start doing some planning, most ideas die in the idea phase, the planning phase. What I encourage people to do in the book, in real life, is to allocate just a small amount of time to the idea, allocate a slightly larger percent of time to the plan, but spend most of your time in execution. For example, I'll break it down and say, hey, you need to be spending 1% of your time talking about the idea, because everybody's got an idea, and I've got a million ideas a day that I wish that I could actually execute upon. but I don't because I'm limited in terms of resources and time. So get to the planning phase. Start planning things out and don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. So you've spent 1% of your time getting this idea, spend another 9% of your time talking about your plan and try to think of some of the pitfalls, but you're not going to find all the pitfalls or all the shortcomings or challenges until you actually get to the execution phase. So the whole success story of my life is that I've been spending so much time, the majority of my time, not talking about ideas, not planning ideas, but actually diving right into the execution phase and not getting lost in the midst of idea conversations. We've all got family members and friends and people in our lives who are constantly talking about ideas, or you go to a reception or a cocktail party or sit down at the Thanksgiving dinner table and you just start to roll your eyes because the person's been talking about the same idea or 1,000 different ideas for the past 10, 20, 30 years. And you're just thinking, my gosh, your life is stuck. But here's the thing. It's about not being stuck, maximizing your momentum. And how do you maximize your momentum? Your self-awareness has got to be so high that you can be honest with yourself and say, hey, I've been talking about this idea for too long. Or because I'm afraid, I'm really stuck in the planning phase, but I've got to have courage right now to get into the execution phase, because what happens there, I find out what's working in terms of my plan, what's not working. I can rejigger things, retweak things to make sure that this execution is actually going to be successful. I've applied this to my personal life. I've applied it to my business life. I've applied it to my spiritual life. And it's all about execution at the end of the day. That's what separates the billionaires in this world from those who are just sitting at the table talking or walking around at a cocktail party bragging about some amazing new invention idea that they have, but there's really no implementation taking place.
I love it, and I can for sure relate to both having had this bad habit, and I mean it's always easy to backslide temporarily, and I can also relate to hearing this from other people. Either they're thinking ahead to the future, and they don't want to go through the actual ups and downs, the struggle, the courage, the course correction, those things that you listed. They just like the perfect idea in the future, and one day it could happen, except for it turns out one day like doesn't actually come, and it's like the actual that execution part of it. There's like so much hairiness and roughness and all the all the ugly stuff happens in there in order to break through, and so I can definitely relate to that kind of stuff. And then you mentioned in there mind, body, spirit, and I really think that that's really good timing, because I was talking to someone just this morning about how he had sort of a revelation about how in a few years ago, me and him had bought some like motivational kind of stuff, like Tony Robbins type of stuff, and we told ourselves, well, we want to up our game with our business. And we learned some of this motivational stuff, and it turns out, kind of looking back, that we had only looked to apply the self-help motivation, like all the stuff that you mentioned about, the rituals and habits and everything. We had looked to only apply those things to our business, and it gave a little bit of an improvement, but it was almost like a temporary band-aid on the problem. And it's like we upped our business, but then the other parts of our lives sort of suffered in their own way. And then it took maybe a few more years to realize, oh yeah, it's all kind of interconnected, right? Like the mind, body, spirit stuff are interconnected. And if we look to improve just one aspect without improving all of them, the rest will suffer. And in the same way, if we look to just kind of up our game with our business, but we're not also upping our game with our health and our family and our relationships, then it'll kind of put things super out of whack. And so that really just kind of, I mean, I'm still sort of reeling from my friend's revelation there. And I'm still kind of thinking about it a lot. And so, have you experienced or have you seen this kind of thing where maybe people that they look to improve their lives, but they don't improve the whole thing, and then it ends up sort of shooting themselves in the foot, at least temporarily?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, if you don't work on all three, something's going to collapse. I do not believe, Robert, that you can have a great mind or a great spirit if you don't have a great physical body. You've got to eat the right foods, you've got to put the right food into it, and you've got to do the exercises on at least 4 or 5 times a week and break that sweat and get those toxins out of the body. Because guess where the toxins go if you don't get them out of your body? They start to pollute your mind and your spirit. I've got a coaching practice where I'm working with executives around the world and people who are in the C-suite who have tremendous amounts of stress on their time and don't get to spend as much time with their families and just have a lot of pressures on them from the world to achieve. They report to boards of directors, they report to stakeholders, shareholders, and they've got to be performing all the time. How do they take their game to the next level with that kind of pressure? They have to take the time out to ensure that they're putting the right things into their body and also nourishing their body with exercise. These things are so interconnected in such a way as that toxins flow freely from one system to the next. And, there are scientific studies on this about how some of the greatest performers throughout history who've really mastered themselves physically have also mastered themselves mentally. And the two play wonderfully with one another. You're not going to see somebody achieve at the highest levels who is, eating, a ton of French fries every single day, and not, going for walks, getting vitamin D, or drinking water. You have some people who are naturally gifted from a mind perspective, but in order to get to true happiness and peak performance, you've got to be willing to do the work with the physical body to nourish the spiritual body. And this is all cyclical. It all works together. And I've seen executives actually go through true transformations, metamorphoses in their intellect, in their capabilities, in their ability to get a company from one level to the next by focusing on what they were doing wrong and focusing on what they were doing right to take their game to the next level and beyond.
So when you see all these people and they're doing this metamorphosis that you mentioned, where they kind of have the awakening, and they know that they need to step up their performance in all areas. Do you see like a really common stumbling block or a number one universal mistake that people always tend to make when they look to improve their lives in these ways?
So here's the main thing that I see. I see a lack of self-awareness among top leaders about honestly looking at themselves about what's holding them back. For example, for me, I have a coach who coaches me, but I'm also a professional coach who coaches other executives. Now, people wonder, well, James, you have a coach. It seems like you were supposed to have all the answers if you're providing coaching services to other examples and other executives. There's the thing. That's why I'm successful, is because I know that I'm not perfect, Robert. I know that I've got my shortcomings. I know that if I do a SWOT analysis on James R. Nowlin, that there are certain weaknesses, there are certain threats for my ability to achieve at peak performance. And because I have the self-awareness and the humility to be coached by someone else, I can take my game to the next level and beyond. But the main stumbling block is that people already think that they already have the answers. And if I can get to an executive that says, I am ready to take my life to the next level and beyond, not because society has told me that I'm a great person or because I make $1 million or $10 million a year, but because I want to be my true personal best, which means being happy, which means being a peak performer, which means bringing my best to my family, my community, and my business, and my professional life, then that person is going to take their game to the next level and beyond. But what I see sometimes is because somebody's at a certain compensation level or has a C title after their name, the higher you go, the lower the self-awareness gets. But when you find somebody who's at the top, who's willing to do the work, there is no telling where that person's going to be. I'm working with an executive right now. She was in the C-suite of a $1 billion plus organization. She has just been hired as the CEO of a multi-billion dollar organization that she is literally going to take to the next level and beyond, because we did the self-awareness work. And part of that was for her to look at her physical body, her spiritual well-being, and her mind well-being, and really excavate the demons that were holding her back and do the work to plant the seeds that would take her to the next level and beyond. And because of that, she is going to be one of the most recognized, one of the most respected women business leaders in the country, because of her humility and her just commitment to saying, you know what, I'm going to slay the dragon. I didn't know what was holding me back, but I've got a coach and he's going to help me get to the next level and beyond.
Amazing. So, is there an easy way to get to that state of mind of saying, I don't know everything, I need help? Like, is it a matter of like just being knocked down enough times, or like if someone says like, I have this self awareness problem, but like I'm not quite at the time I need to get it fixed. Like, how does someone get to the point where they're ready to accept that help?
I really love it when people search for help before they crash and burn. We've just got so many pressures on us from a social media perspective to, having board members, to people having instant access to us at all times, the cell phone devices that we have, we never get to turn it off. And because we never get to turn it off, we lack self-awareness when it comes to a lot of things. How do you get to it quickly? I would say, hire a coach, hire a fantastic coach who you really connect with. You guys, when you guys vibrate on a higher frequency because of the conversations that you have and because of the work that's being done, you can take your game to the next level and beyond. Now, here's the caveat. It's not going to happen overnight because the self-realization must take place over the course of time in order for you to actually start implementing some things to change in your life. You don't go from being an obese person to becoming, one of the fastest runners in the world or an Olympic athlete. You have to work on this, and you've got to get the diet right. You've got to get your mind diet right. You've got to get your spirituality diet right. You've got to get your physical diet right and your exercise in all those areas right as well for you to achieve at the highest levels. So, Robert, it does take time, but I think that the easiest thing to do is to realize, you know what, I'm not perfect, but number two, because I know that I'm not perfect, I've got to have a trusted resource that I hire to help me take my game to the next level and beyond. Now, there are tons of executive coaches out there. I'm not, advocating for me to be anybody's executive coach, but if people want to contact me, that's fine. That's good, great, and dandy. But I want people to understand, too, the difference between having a mentor and having a paid coach. A paid coach is going to check in with you regularly and is going to hold you accountable for what you say. And because you're on that person's clock, that person's going to bring a certain amount of rigor to expectations that you set for yourself and expectations that the coach sets for you. A mentor, on the other hand, can be a friend, someone who is in your particular industry or workplace, or someone who is from your background. I have a college professor who is a mentor of mine for the past 20 years. However, he and I, even though he's providing wisdom and ideas, he is not holding my feet to the fire. My coach holds my feet to the fire and says, you told me this, therefore I expect this out of you, and you told me that you were going to achieve this by a certain date. Did you do it or did you not do it? That's the kind of toughness that a great coach brings that will take you to the next level, because sometimes when it comes to high achievement, we won't share our biggest goals with others because we're afraid of not achieving those goals. A great coach is going to hold you accountable in a very private way, where you have respect for him or her, and that person has respect for you. But what happens at the end of the day is that the conversation is so powerful that you end up transforming your life, your business, your profession, and in turn, you're going to be a much happier person. You're going to find that you're working much more productively. You're going to find that you're liking your work a lot more, and the people around you like you a lot more because you have that happiness in life, and you're not just setting private goals for yourself, but you've got a true accountability partner who's going to push you and make the best out of you.
I love it. Very good advice, and just all that more reminder that we can't always do it ourselves. Sometimes we need that helping hand to give us that harsh truth, but also someone that we can share those goals with privately and basically share and get guidance from the right person. So I love all of it, and it's all either like reminders or new takes on things or new information on how we can all better ourselves. And so as we're winding our conversation down today, you mentioned that after your accident, you kind of had a renewed purpose and all that kind of stuff. So can you kind of tell us about like what that new big purpose is? And then you also mentioned your book, The Purposeful Millionaire. So can you tell us about sort of those two things if they fit together, the big purpose and the book?
Absolutely. My purpose is to empower as many people on this earth with the necessary tools to become powerful, purposeful people professionally and personally in their lives. I'm doing that by giving keynote speeches on stages around the world. I'm doing that by providing coaching services to high-performing executives and people who really want to take their game to the next level. And I'm also doing that by, providing book signings and going to as many events as possible where, I know that my voice is going to be respected. And I've got what's called Millionaire Mondays. I send people encouraging emails on a weekly basis. They come out on Monday, and people can sign up for those emails at www.jamesnowlin.com. That's N as in Nancy, Owlin, like the word now, jamesnowlin.com, to stay encouraged in the battle. Because one thing that I know, Robert, is that this is really, really hard to constantly be achieving at these really high levels and to constantly be executing and putting the success formula in play. People need encouragement. They need coaching. They need to hear the speeches. They need somebody who's going to be an objective resource to coach them, who's going to check in with them and hold them accountable to achieve their dreams. And they also need to hear the positive message of, yes, you can, yes, you will, if you continue to do the work and continue to execute upon your plan. So that's what I'm doing, Robert. And the book for me is not only a testimonial for my mission on this earth, but it is a resource. It is a tool that I want others to read and to understand that, you might not put all 52 rules into play immediately overnight, but if you put 3 or 4 of these rules into play, into practice in your life right now, you're going to have a better life. You're going to have a more powerful life, and you're going to be a happier person too. And when you're happier with the work that you're doing and the output that you're achieving into the universe, your game is going to be taken to the next level. It's like after you take that first step, you get to the top of the staircase, and you're just going to keep on climbing and climbing and climbing to the next level above and beyond that, because you're a happier, more peaceful, and more powerful person. So that's my mission, Robert. I want folks to sign up for Millionaire Mondays. I want people to get me on stage to deliver as many keynote speeches as possible. And I want to sell this book like crazy and to get it in as many hands as possible, because I truly believe that if people, I don't want people to have a near-death accident like me in order to have an awakening to live a purposeful, powerful life. I've been there, guys. I've drowned in the water. I've had, my body, recovered from a storm, and I've had to, come back from brain injuries. I've had to come back from antidepressants. I don't want that for these folks out there. I want them to live powerful, purposeful lives by taking that first step, and putting some rules into place right now, today.
Awesome stuff. Well, I agree about 1,000,000,000%, and I agree on all counts that we all want to have that better, that happier, that more fulfilled life. And if we're not careful about making sure that we're on track, then we're gonna end up in a place that we don't want to be. Like you said, either in a bad accident, or if you surround yourself with that wrong inner circle, that wrong mastermind, they'll drag you down. If you don't have a life plan, or if you don't have those kind of daily habits and activities that get you there, lots of little ways to go wrong. But if we have those tools at our disposal, then we can plug in there. So everyone should go right now to jamesnowlin.com. Like you said, JamesNowlin.com. There we go. And sign up for Millionaire Mondays. And I assume, Mr. James, that people can also get the Purposeful Millionaire book from that website as well?
Absolutely. The easiest way to get it is just go on to jamesonamazon.com. Jamesonamazon.com. You'll see the book. I think it's for $14.99, maybe $18.99. We're actually working on an audiobook right now, Robert, and I can't wait for it to be released. The release is going to be this fall. So for folks who don't like to read, the audiobook is on the way. But in the interim, sign up for Millionaire Mondays and go on jamesonamazon.com. You can get the ebook as well as the hardcover book as well.
Super great stuff. So, I mean, if you're going to be spending that time, reading something, or you're going to be in the car once the audiobook comes out, I mean, you could be listening to the radio, could be listening to, whatever crap is out there, but why not listen to something that improves your life, that gets you closer and faster to where you want? So listen to that book when it comes out on Audible, or in the audio form. So jamesonamazon.com to get the book directly, and then jamesnowlin.com to get on the list for those Millionaire Mondays, so that you have that extra juice, that extra jump start all the time to get you to where you need to go. So all kinds of great stuff to unpack, and I recommend that everyone listening listen to this at least 5 times, listen to this at least a month, once a month or so. And if it's been a couple years, maybe come back and find this episode again and listen to it again, because I think it's just that important. And I mean, you only have your one life, so don't screw it up. And even if you did screw it up, then it's part of the ups and downs. It's a reason to know where the problem is and know where to do better. So jamesnowlin.com, jamesonamazon.com. I want to thank you, James, for sharing your story, and for turning lemons into lemonade, and for sharing us all these insights, so that, like you said, we don't have to go through all those things that you went through, and we can all live that enlightened life that we all want to live. So thanks for stopping by and sharing some of that knowledge with us.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. I certainly appreciate it. And you know what? You get one shot at life, and statistics tell me that I'm not supposed to be alive. And I'm doing everything that I can to live right and to live my best life, and to help as many people as possible to live right and to live their best, most powerful, positive, productive, wonderful life. So thank you very much, Robert.
We really appreciate you listening to today's episode of The Robert Plank Show. Subscribe to us on iTunes and rate and review us at robertplank.com/iTunes.